Lions' secondary nightmare. Kerby Joseph and Brian Branch injury truth bomb. Detroit, we need to talk, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this one. The Lions just got hit with some good news and some bad news, and honestly, the bad news is the kind that makes you want to put your phone down and go for a walk. But stick with me because there is a silver lining buried in here, and by the end of this video, you're going to feel a whole lot better about where this team actually stands heading into training camp. Welcome back to Detroit Scope. Quick ask before we get into it. We are closing in on 1,000 subscribers on this channel, and if you have not hit that subscribe button yet, now is the perfect time. It genuinely helps us keep bringing you this kind of deep dive Lions coverage. All right, let's get into the bad news because there is a lot of it. Let's start with Kerby Joseph. This is not exactly breaking news that his knee has been a problem. We have been tracking this saga for months now. But the severity of the language coming out of Allen Park lately should genuinely worry every single Lions fan. Dan Campbell has been asked point blank multiple times this offseason what to expect from Joseph in 2026, and every single time, the answer has been some version of pure uncertainty. Not optimistic coach speak. Not a vague timeline. Just, quote, I don't know, I honestly do not know. That is about as blunt as it gets from a head coach who usually tries to spin things positively for the cameras. Here is what makes this one so unsettling. Joseph has already made the decision not to undergo surgery because doctors have told him a procedure simply will not fix what is going on in that knee. He shut things down last season, missed the entire back half of the year, sat out OTAs, sat out minicamp, and has spent this offseason quietly documenting his rehab process on social media, including some viral clips of him testing that knee out that honestly made fans more nervous, not less. The Lions are being intentionally cautious here, refusing to push him onto the practice field until they absolutely have to. Because the second he takes a real football rep, that is when everyone finally finds out whether this thing holds up. If it does not go well once camp actually starts, there's a real chance Joseph gets placed on injured reserve immediately, ending his season before it even begins. And if that happens, the conversation shifts from when does he come back to does he ever play football again. That is not a dramatic reach. That is the actual stakes on the table for one of this franchise's best defensive players. Now let's talk about Brian Branch, because this one is a slightly different flavor of concerning. Unlike Joseph, nobody is questioning whether Branch eventually gets back on the field. His return is basically guaranteed at some point. The question is when, and honestly, the timeline here is worse than most fans want to admit. Branch tore his Achilles back in early December against the Cowboys, and Achilles recoveries typically run anywhere from 8 to 12 months. Do the math on that, and you land somewhere in the October to December range for a realistic return, not some optimistic week 1 fantasy. Dan Campbell himself has basically thrown up his hands on giving a firm date, at one point telling reporters to just go ahead and assume December and treat anything earlier as a bonus. There's also a new league rule this year that could accelerate things slightly, shortening the mandatory sideline window for players who start the season on the physically unable to perform list, which could get Branch back onto an active roster a little quicker than the old rule allowed. But even with that wrinkle, we are still talking about a 24-year-old coming off one of the toughest injuries in football, and the Lions have every incentive in the world to not rush him back a single day early. So brace yourselves, Lions fans. If Branch is playing meaningful snaps before November, consider that a genuine win. All right, that is the bad news, and it is real bad news. But here is where this story takes a turn, and it is the part one think gets buried every single time this topic comes up. Even in the middle of all this injury chaos, Kerby Joseph and Brian Branch are still, right now, both ranked among the top 10 safeties in the entire NFL, according to a recent league-wide poll of executives, coaches, and scouts. Branch checked in at number 4, described by one NFL passing game coordinator as a complete player who is a baller when healthy with elite instincts. Joseph landed at number 9, still viewed around the league as a ball-hawking difference maker. Think about that for a second. 2 guys currently sidelined, one with total uncertainty and one with a recovery timeline stretching into the back half of the season, and evaluators around the entire league still consider them elite at their position. That tells you everything about the ceiling this duo has when they're actually healthy. And here is the other piece of good news that Detroit Scope wants you locked in on. This roster has an absurd amount of top-end talent surrounding this injury situation. We're talking about a top 10 quarterback in Jared Goff, who honestly plays like a top 3 quarterback statistically, whether people want to admit it or not. A legitimate top 2 running back in Jahmyr Gibbs, a guy Dan Campbell has said can run literally every scheme in football, not just the flashy outside stuff. but the tough interior gap runs that require real patience and vision. A top 5 tight end in Sam Laporta. Talented receivers. An elite defensive end anchoring the front. A do-it-all linebacker in Jack Campbell. That is an absurd collection of blue-chip talent at nearly every level of the roster. It means this team does not need its safeties to be perfect to still be dangerous. It needs its safeties to be good enough while the rest of that talent does the heavy lifting. And if you are still spiraling about the secondary specifically, take a breath, because Detroit is far from the only contender walking into training camp with a glaring hole somewhere on the roster. Every single team chasing a Super Bowl right now is nursing some kind of weakness. Dallas has real questions about their cornerback depth even after adding pieces this offseason. The Eagles are replacing significant safety production of their own. Around the NFC North, the Bears are going to have real trouble stopping the run, which honestly should be music to Lions fans' ears considering what that does for opposing quarterbacks. Out west, the Rams have arguably the most complete roster in the league on paper, but their top 2 receivers are a walking injury risk and an aging veteran. The 49ers cannot stay healthy no matter what they try. Even Seattle, a team that is tough to find a real weakness for, still has one if you look hard enough. The point is simple. Every single contender in this league is managing something heading into the 2026 season. Detroit just happens to have theirs concentrated at one specific position, and that position still happens to be stocked with 2 players who rank inside the league's elite, even while hurt. The Lions also did not sit on their hands this offseason, waiting to see how Joseph and Branch's situations played out. Brad Holmes went out and added real insurance at safety, bringing in former Baltimore Ravens starter Chuck Clark and former Buccaneers starter Christian Izien, both of whom have legitimate starting experience and are expected to be ready for Week 1 regardless of what happens with the 2 returning stars. Layer in returning depth pieces who have shown real promise on special teams. And this secondary, while far from a finished product, is not the empty cupboard some fans are imagining in their head right now. So here is where Detroit's scope lands on this whole situation heading into camp. Yes, the Kerby Joseph news is scary. And yes, there's a real chance his football future hangs in the balance depending on how his body responds once real reps start. Yes, Brian Branch is going to take longer to get back than most of us initially hoped. And even when he does return, there is no guarantee he looks exactly like the Pro Bowl caliber player he was before the injury. That is the sobering reality. But this roster has enough elite talent surrounding that uncertainty to stay competitive while both of them work their way back. And if either one or both return anywhere close to their previous form later this season, Detroit's defense could go from a question mark to a genuine weapon just in time for a playoff push. Training camp is the moment of truth here. Once real football reps start, we finally get real answers on both of these guys, and Detroit Scope will be tracking every single update the moment it drops. That is the story for today. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Are you more worried about Kerby Joseph's long-term outlook or Brian Branch's timeline this season? Make sure you hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more Lions fans who need to see this breakdown. And if you have not subscribed yet, we are so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers here on Detroit Scope. So go ahead and hit that button right now so you do not miss a single update as training camp gets rolling. Until next time, Detroit, stay locked in.